Just why are young men in America joining the Russian Orthodox Church? Asks the BBC. But it's fairly self-evident as to what the answer is, isn't it? I mean, and this is not a phenomenon reserved purely for the Americans either, nor just the Russian Orthodox Church. For example, in Britain, I know a couple of people who have joined the Greek Orthodox Church, which is just something that is becoming apparent that the Protestant Church is, of course, failing in its duty. Now, I'm an English atheist, so obviously I'm a member of the Church of England. I'm not a member of the Church of England, but you know why I'm saying it. And it's because just generally, evangelical Protestantism has gone completely woke. It's totally soft. This is just an example from Germany, but you can find an example anyway. This is literally just the first thing I found on Google, because you know the pattern. You can see from the pride flags exactly where this has gone. And it's not that the Catholics haven't had a bit of a problem with this as well, but it is the evangelical Protestants that are the most guilty of this, going just completely soft and libtarded. And nobody's got any time for it, because what this means is the entire church fundamentally doesn't become about religion, which I think if you're going to a church, maybe it should be about the religion. But secondly, it makes the entire church female-coded. Oh, this is about women, gays, transgenders, and minorities, is it? Why would I be interested in going to a church that prioritizes all of the things that I'm not above me, with external political symbols taking primary purpose over the religion itself? Why would I want this if I was a young man? Compare that to this. It's like, well, which one do you think, as a man, I find more appealing? It's just because I'm such a die-hard xenophobe that I'm not prepared to join the Russian church, frankly, the Greek church. It's because I'm afraid I have to, spiritually support the Church of England, even if I kind of hate everything about what's happening there. But I thought we'd just go through this, just because this is just funny. It's just really, really funny that it's like, look, you could become a power lifter and join the Orthodox Church, or you could become a power bottom and stay with the Protestant Church. And it's like, yeah, no, I think I would join. I think I would choose the power lifter, actually. And the thing is, I don't really know what the substantive difference in doctrine is that changes between Orthodox and Protestant, right? I don't actually know how different they are, but I can't imagine it's such a radically different interpretations of the teachings of Jesus that mean, on one hand, you're allowed to be manly, and on the other hand, you have to be gay. But I just don't think that the doctrinal difference between the two is that significant. I think it's just the culture of the people who are running it. And so if the culture of the people in the Orthodox Church is, yeah, we're just going to be chads, actually, lift weights and praise God, well, I mean, is there anything stopping the Protestants from doing that? I think the Protestants could do that if they wanted. Right? I think that's actually something this is an option that's open to them, I'm rather sure. But again, I'm not familiar with the doctrinal difference, so let's carry on. A lot of people ask me, Father Moses, how can I increase my manliness to absurd levels? In a YouTube video, a priest championing a form of virile, unapologetic masculinity. Well, that sounds useful, doesn't it? Skinny jeans, crossing your legs, using an iron, shaping your eyebrows, and even eating soup. Even eating soup are among the things he derides as too feminine. Well, I don't wear skinny jeans, I don't cross my legs, I don't use an iron, because I have a wife. I don't shape my eyebrows, which you can probably tell, and I don't eat soup because I like meat. So I'm doing pretty well according to Father Moses McPherson's list. There are other videos of him, powerfully built father of 5, weightlifting to the sound of heavy metal. Yeah, I wonder why this is winning over young men. He was raised as a Protestant and once worked as a roofer, but now serves as a priest in the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia in Georgetown, Texas. This is a global network whose headquarters are in New York, and it's been expanding across the US, mainly as a result of converting people from other faiths. In the last 6 months, Father Moses has prepared 75 new followers for baptism in his church of the Mother of God just north of Austin. When my wife and I converted 20 years ago, we used to call Orthodoxy the best kept secret because people didn't know what it was, but in a year and a half, our congregation has tripled in size. During Sunday liturgy at Father Moses' church, I'm struck by the number of men in their 20s and 30s praying and crossing themselves at the back of the nave, and how this religion seems to attract young men uneasy with life in modern America. Well, that's because the tone and tenor of the thing is Eastern and masculine, and not Western and feminine. That's the reason. Software engineer Theodore tells me he had a dream and a job and a wife he adored, but he felt empty inside, as if there was a hole in his heart. He believes that society has been very harsh on men, and is constantly telling them they are in the wrong. He complains that when men are criticized for wanting to be the breadwinner and support a stay-at-home wife, we are told that's a very toxic relationship nowadays. That's not how it should be. And so you see a lot of men who are like, I actually don't agree with the woke feminism that dominates Western society. Maybe there's another way of looking at relationships, and unsurprisingly, almost all the convicts the author meets have opted to homeschool their offspring, partly because they believe that women should prioritize their families rather than their careers. Why shouldn't they? Why shouldn't they? I mean, again, this is just traditional family values as up until, well, like the 1970s, 1960s in the West, we also believed in. And instead of women being corporate drones, whose job is to increase the GDP, they were actually tasked with keeping house and raising children and enjoying their lives, while the men got to go out and be the breadwinners, so they had a position of dignity. And the women had the ability to create a much more sort of lovely society in which we could live. And you know what's very interesting is the decline of volunteerism, since women have fled the home, the horrible oppressive home, and gone into the workforce. There used to be, in like Victorian England and America, huge numbers of not just charities, but like private social clubs and endeavors that were run by women in order to make sure that the society in which we lived was nice and deal with people like the poor, the sick, orphanages, things like this. A lot of these would be run privately by women who would go and do things that they found to be socially necessary, because actually they weren't just slaves and they weren't just chained in the home. They had a vital social role. And this is all, of course, withered away with women joining the workforce, because, of course, they're too busy to do that now. The kind of socially important things that used to be done that kept the genuine sort of sinews of the community together now just aren't happening. And so we wonder why society is declining and why things feel so hollow. Well, there are lots of tangible things that women used to do that they're just not doing now. And actually, maybe a return to a kind of tradition in this regard might be a wise thing, but whatever. I'm just an evil far-righter, I've been told. Father John Whiteford, an archpriest there, says that homeschooling ensures religious education and a way of protecting your children while avoiding any talk about transgenderism or the 57 genders of the month or whatever. And you can see exactly how this is getting into people's minds. Oh, the Russian Orthodox Church is not doing these things, but the Protestant Church won't shut up about them. Which one do I choose? Comparing the millions of worshippers in America's evangelical megachurches, the number of Christian Orthodox tiny, only about 1% of the population, of course. But you can see why it would be appealing, because they're not woke, and they're not going to reinforce transgenderism in your children or whatever it is. And again, you can just see why. The whole thing is coded male. Anyway, a smaller study of 773 converts backs up the trend that Pew Research Center found that suggests Orthodox Christians are up to 64% male, which is up 46% in 2007. So you can see that the natural sort of flow of men into the church has rendered it more masculine. And the Orthodox Church carries on many traditions that the Protestants lost, such as the tradition of having monks, which is interesting, because this obviously fell out of favour in the Church of England with the dissolution of the monasteries by Henry VIII, and now it's just become a very limp institution, whereas monks are they're people who are taking the religion seriously. And so I find monks to be an interesting archetype that the Western man has essentially, at least Anglo man, has had denied to him. I would like more monks. Monks are cool. Go and live in a monastery somewhere and brew beer and make honey or whatever it is that monks do while praising God. That's definitely a life that a small percentage of young men would want, right? It gives them something to do. Anyway, as you can see, this is something that is gaining kind of cultural traction because of the vastly underserved demographic of young men who don't know what they ought to be doing with themselves. Like, there are loads of young men who are, I mean, when you're just essentially cast out of polite society if you're not prepared to be excessively woke and play second fiddle in your own life to women and minorities, well, where do you go? Well, if Father Moses here is like, well, there is a place in the Orthodox Church for men. The Protestant churches, they don't really seem to have a place for men. But the Orthodox Church, as he says here, is not necessarily masculine. It's just normal. It's just normal. And so they don't stigmatize men and they don't excessively praise women. And they're just normal. As he says, in the West, everything has become very feminized. Some Protestant churches mainly cater for women. I don't want to go to services that feel like a Taylor Swift concert. If you look at the language of worship music, it's all emotion that's just not men. Yeah, I mean, in a way, and this, I think, makes perfect sense. If you can just be normal rather than polluted with gobbledygook intersectional Marxist ideology, which, again, the important thing about the pride flag is it doesn't state a concern about a kind of person. What it states is a particular interpretation of thought, which is intersectional woke ideology. Now, this fundamentally comes out of the Marxists, who essentially lost the argument during the civil rights movement to the liberals, and have been working their way through the institutions trying to pervert liberal ideology ever since. And it's liberalism's intrinsic weakness to Marxism that allows this to happen. And so there's no point trying to go backwards. Just changing tack is the way to solve this. But the point being, the pride flag is a state of ideological dominion. And this is why, when they're looking at the Orthodox Church, they're saying, well, hang on a second, this is so obviously not woke that it accepts men, as in the traditional biblical interpretation of men being the man of the house. And that's appealing to a lot of young men, but it's also appealing to a lot of women. A lot of women don't actually want to become wage slaves for BlackRock, Amazon, or some subsidiary thereof. They actually don't want to just spend all their time filing reports or sending emails for a boss who doesn't care about them at all. They actually don't want this. It's actually not desirable to be sat under the fluorescent lights of the office while sat in front of a screen, sending as many emails as you can and then going home to an empty apartment. But at least you're financially independent. Yay, well done. And those women who do waste their time doing that during their 20s, find that in their early 30s, they're looking around going, well, hang on a second. This isn't the future I was promised. I was promised satisfaction, and I don't have it. And now I'm thinking, well, maybe I want to change my life and become a wife and mother. Well, maybe you shouldn't have wasted the last 10 years not doing that. But anyway, I don't want to go on to a big rant about it. The point being, it's not surprising that young men are looking at anything else other than the native institutions that have completely not just failed them, but betrayed them. And said, yeah, you know what, there actually isn't a place for you in society. What there is a place for is those people who don't propagate society. The people who are not responsible for producing and rearing the next generation are going to take precedence in everything that we do. And for some reason, we don't know why, our congregations are vanishing and are going over to foreign churches that are like, hey guys, we don't hate you. How about you come in and we'll lift some weights together?